You remember when UPI was launched, SBI and HDFC did not launch UPI in August 2016. A normal RBI would have succumbed to their biggest bank's request to kill UPI. So you needed an RBI governor who was willing to stick his neck out. So our view is that change in India happens when you stumble into policymakers like this, and they deserve the glory. All our neighbors have mobile operators, but all of them are supplied by Huawei, Ericsson, Nokia and Samsung, right? Why shouldn't the Indian company be missing from this list? 40% of our unicorns are technically not Indian at all, right? They are Singaporean or American. Tomorrow when they make money, then money will benefit Singaporean society, the US society. If you don't go through 3 valleys of death, you are not doing, 3 to lagenge. So then we show them the UPI chart, because UPI, for somebody to imagine that it went through 3 valleys of death is very difficult. If you go back 10 years, let's say IIT Bombay, because that used to send lots of people, there would be roughly 80% of the people would go abroad. Now 80% of people choose to stay here.
Hi, this is Siddharth Aluwalia and welcome to The Neon Show. This episode's guest is a powerhouse in Indian startup ecosystem. 15 years ago, he was the CEO of Yahoo India R&D. Today, he is co-founder of the company that has played a key role in building India's stack, which includes UPI, DigiLocker and eKYC. It's my pleasure to welcome iSPIRT's Sharad Sharma on The Neon Show. I would also like to thank the sponsors, Prime Venture Partners, for sponsoring The Neon Show. Hope you enjoy it. Sir, would love to start with your childhood. Like, what did it look like and where did you grow up, and how much that the city that you grew up in shaped you, changed you in your present day?
So my father is an anthropologist, and he used to be working in what is now Arunachal Pradesh. It used to be called NIFA. So when I was born, I was about to be born in 1964. I think my parents said, no, we must have our child grow up in a big city. So he moved to Delhi and joined Planning Commission, and he was there the rest of his life. So my childhood was in Delhi. I grew up in a colony called RK Puram. I went to school DPS RK Puram, and
the most famous school.
It wasn't that famous then. As I like to tell that story, we were the 4th batch. And I think the first few batches started doing very well, and then they turned that into a franchise machine, right? So then after that, I did my engineering from Delhi College of Engineering, and then I've been working. So I had a happy childhood. I have a sister who is 3 years younger than me.
And you were always in government quarters.
I was always in government because I had a very middle class upbringing, but a very happy upbringing. Very simple.
People around you like yourself, right? There is no.
They were, in fact, my parents,
inequality.
my friends, all this was, look, all that we can give you is education. Aap uska tumne jo karna hai, kar lo, right? This was the approach that was there. And then obviously amongst your cousins and amongst the neighbors, there would be some children who are doing well, then they would be highlighted as role models. So a 2-year older friend of mine, his name is Shyam, and so Shyam was cited as a role model, and फिर यही होता था कि why can't you be like Shyam? Why can't you be like this?
Or a DCN? Shyam was an IITian or a DCN?
He ended up going to IIT.
Okay.
So I have a story about that too. So I have very high myopia. And most of my family was in government service, civil service, except for my chacha, who was an engineer. Everybody else was a non-engineer. And so I finished my schooling in 1982. In 1980s, there was a medical test for all professional courses, including engineering. And the standard for that was that if you are -8 and above in your eyes, then you were medically unfit. And very early on, I was above -8 in both my eyes. So I was technically not competent to go to the engineering college. And my chacha, who passed away very recently, had a very important role to play because he encouraged me. He says, look, you want to be that, you will find a way. There will be something that will appear. So then eventually it became clear that there were two engineering colleges at that time that were rumored not to do any medical test. And that was Roorkee and Delhi College of Engineering. So my zero in thing was ke bhai isme to kam se kam ghusna hai. So of course, I was keen to be an engineer because I liked tinkering. I used to build things, and it was like, that was my way of, that was something I enjoyed.
Your mode of expression.
That was my mode of expression. And so I wanted to become an engineer. And so I was keen, so therefore that happened. But there was no clarity. Remember, this is well before mobile phone, internet. So there was no clarity whether this rumor is true or not. And the thinking was, if you go and ask them, that is only inviting trouble.
Yeah.
So my, at that time, I decided that either I'll do engineering or I will study philosophy. So as a backup, maybe I'll get kicked out from college because they'll do a medical test and find I'm medically unfit. So just to avoid wasting a year, I also signed up for philosophy honors in Hindu college.
Okay.
And people were very surprised because people with good marks would not go for philosophy. But that is how my thing. And that has actually helped me because I've always had interest in philosophy. And I think technology and philosophy are coming together. So it is something.
The best technology leaders have made technology happen at marriage of technology and philosophy.
And
like
if you
Steve
see
Jobs.
some of, and see some of, even in India, that is true also for the West, but even in India, I think some of the entrepreneurs are philosopher CEOs. Some we know because like Sridhar Vembu, he goes to first principles, thinks philosophically. We don't appreciate the other person so much, but he has had a very, very important role to play in our software product ecosystem. His name is Bharat Goenka, and that is Tally. There was no Tally, and had Tally not shown and proven to all of us that you can do a software product for India and make money doing it and be very ethical in doing it. I mean, they've done it very, very well. We wouldn't have had the confidence to move forward. And currently, the person that we have who is very quiet, you should invite him for a podcast. I'll help you get him, is Vimal Kumar of JustPay. He's truly a philosopher CEO and thinks deeply about things, not visible outside. I think the only CEO I know who sometimes sends memos as poems. So I think, philosopher CEO, this is the era of philosopher CEOs also. And of course, because of AI, technology must have a soul, must have values. And that means you need to integrate, people who do engineering with also philosophy. So these are, of course, convergences that are taking place as we speak.
And you later built iSPIRT, on which Avinash and Vijay give credit that if iSPIRT was not there, they wouldn't have been on this journey or whatever they are today on.
No, yes and no, but I think the more important thing, look, iSPIRT is an unfinished journey because iSPIRT is really about making India a product nation, right? And what is a product nation? Product nation is that, look, all our neighbors have mobile operator, right? In fact, every country has a mobile operator. There are hundreds of mobile operators, but all of them are supplied by hens, Huawei, Ericsson, Nokia, and Samsung, right? Now that's a circle of four. Why shouldn't an Indian company be missing from this list, right? So why can't India be in that circle of 4 or 5? Same is the case with almost anything that you can imagine, right? You take the case of uh, uh, the fact that we are talking about airlines. Every country has an airline, but they all buy it from 3 places only. Boeing, Airbus, and Embraer, right? So what will it take for India to be in that circle of 3? How to make that 4? Now these are very hard problems to solve because the innovation ecosystem for a Boeing and an Airbus is fundamentally different from an innovation ecosystem of a Vistara and Indigo, right? And no matter how good Geo becomes or how good Airtel becomes, they won't become a Juniper or a Cisco or a Nokia or a Ericsson because they are fundamentally different DNAs for innovation. The nature of innovation is very different. So in India, because of the 1992 economic change that took place, I think we've learned how to build very successful services companies. So we have very good IT services companies. There is of course TCS, Infosys, Wipro, many others. We've built very successful airlines. We've built hospitals. We've built mobile operators and more. But in each of these cases, the value capture is somewhere else. So, for example, Microsoft, of course, the profits are through the roof, but the low profit year for them was 2013. But even in that low profit year, they made more profits than the top 20 IT services companies of the world put together. Now, don't even talk about it now, right? It's not even comparable. Cisco is having a bad profit year, and yet Cisco makes more profit than the top 5 European mobile operators, which includes Vodafone, Telefonica, and others. I could go on and on. Airbus and Boeing make more money than all the airlines put together. So, in our mindset, what we have to do is to say, can we give India another innings? And in that innings, can we create these product companies that would actually be in that circle of five in their own area? Now, obviously, this is possible. How do we know this is possible? Because we've done it in space, right? We did that with COVID vaccine, for example. India Stack has helped people think of platforms in a way that was not possible earlier. So if we apply our mind to it, then we can do it. But this innovation ecosystem is fundamentally different from the services ecosystem that we have. And this is something that is beginning to now be understood. And part of the reason is G20, part of the reason is China. Why G20? Because if you look at G20 alone, there is France in G20, but the Spain is not in G20, right? Now you say, why? Spain is a big economy. It's about the same size as France. So why would they have one and not the other? But think of it deeply. What do we buy from France? We buy an Airbus, we buy a Rafale, we buy nuclear power plants, we buy submarines. What do we buy from Spain?
Olives.
Olive oil, right? Absolutely. So same is the case between Thailand and Korea, right? You can't name a single product brand from Thailand, but Korea, of course, you can. But in 1974, Thailand per capita income was higher than Korea. It was in 1974 that Korea decided and said, "Yaar, ye nahi chahiye mujhe. I can do better." And I can do better ended up meaning building a part of the economy that they had not focused on earlier. And by building that part of the economy, the circle of five kind of product economy, they are now 5.6 times the per capita income of Thailand. So the question for India is, will we become a Thailand? I think we are on that path now, right? But the question is, can we become a Korea? Can we become a France? Can we become an Israel? That means cross over the middle income trap, as they call it. Answer is, we have to aspire to do that. And to aspire, if we aspire for it, we'll be able to do it. It will still take us 15, 20 years to do it. We'll already, iSPIRT work has been there since 2009, although iSPIRT was formed as a legal entity in 2013. But as a group of volunteers, we've been around since 2009. And so it's already been kind of 14 years. But right from the beginning, we said it is a 30-year journey, and we have 14, 15 years more to go. But I think we can get there. And why do we need to get there? Why is it important whether we get there or not? Because it appears, we're not sure, it may not happen, but it appears that China is making this pivot. China is walking away from job work and actually wanting to sell products. You can see that in EVs and cars. You can see that in cell therapy, gene therapy. You can see that in AI. This is the pivot that they're making. They're going through a bad patch now. Some people say this bad patch is only an adjustment from one type of economy to other. Something that, irritates many of us is that you can even see that here in Bangalore. It's in front of our eyes, but we choose not to see it. So Bangalore is known for garment export, right? There are lots of garment exporters here. Now, if you go back 12 years ago, and you looked at which industrial sewing machines they were buying German and Japanese. Today, 82% of the industrial sewing machines that we import are Chinese. So, and industrial sewing machines are not easy machines. They need precision parts, they're programmable, right? And so they're complex machines. There is, frankly, China will make more money from our garment exports than we will make ourselves. Because the real money is not in the job work that you do, the real money is in the damn machines. And for them to have created an ecosystem that steals share away from Germany and Japan is not easy, but they've done it. The joke is that it's a sad joke, but nevertheless, that Israel and and Switzerland and their companies make more money from a diamond cutting and exports than Surat makes itself, because we get low value added work, but it happens on complex machines. All those machines are from those places. So the question is, will we go back into the ecosystem to build that stuff? And the only way that is possible is that if our startups embrace this idea. And for the startups to embrace this idea, it is important that they embrace a new way of innovating. For the new way of innovating, there has to be some jugalbandi between either public research or public infrastructure and private innovation. So this has been the journey for a long time. And that journey became crystallized not because of the garment stuff, it's because of our SaaS industry. Because, and you can see this, the amount of money our SaaS companies make, the same amount of money our cloud infrastructure providers will make. Right?
Yeah,
And they're
they take
starting to
20%.
squeeze. And they're starting to squeeze because they know they can squeeze it. So their share of the profit pool will go up. The share of the person who actually has made the business application and put it on and made it available to others will shrink. So this is an economic model that we have to understand and then operate in the part of the economic model that matters to us in a big way.
We talked about how value capture is happening by China, by Israel, because they are building the core components of where the value is getting captured. And these are, to summarize, machines which are complex in nature. And China is doing away with job work because they don't want their people to be in factories for 12 to 14 hours a day. And India is happy to take that away.
Yes. Although I would say, for both China and India, we need both. We need the job work because that provides jobs. And we need the deeper part, the product part of it, because that provides wealth. Because if you only do the job work part, the Thailand or Spain equivalent, then you'll only hit a middle income kind of a part. You can't go beyond that. And as you know, very few countries have managed to become wealthy countries, developed countries, because they were able to overcome the middle income trap. The middle income trap overcoming requires you to be in part of the profit pool, you're part of the ecosystem where there's a profit pool. And you have to create valuable companies to be able to do that. And that requires, those companies don't happen by happenstance. For example, space transportation. If you go back to 2008 when SpaceX was struggling, and you said, look, let's fast forward 15 years, right, from there. And the winner of the space transportation thing will be this piddly little startup. Most people would have said, nahi, it'll be Boeing, it'll be Lockheed Martin, it'll be somebody else. See, look, the market picks the winners. And the mindset is that it should be the Davids that should win that market. That's how the value and the wealth get created. So therefore, that we can't predict who the winners will be, but we have to create ecosystems where enough companies are going after that area, the valuable area, so that at least one of them can be a winner, if not more, as we go forward.
Coming back to your David versus Goliath story. So Elon Musk has always positioned himself as a David, be it
Absolutely.
Tesla,
Absolutely.
be it
Because your
SpaceX.
best work comes when you actually put it as is. So in our iSPIRT stuff, we are always the underdogs. In fact, two conditions that you need to meet, and the other one you hinted at already. Second is you have to do contrarian stuff based on first principles. Because whatever is the general consensus is usually wrong.
Yeah.
Right? Or it's shallow. It's not, even if it's not wrong. So you must have the ability to say that our way of thinking of this problem is different. Ours, and therefore you frame the problem differently, you frame the solution differently. That's number one. Second is you must see yourself as an underdog. Because if you don't see yourself as an underdog, then the first time the wind comes and defeats you and makes you fall down, then you would fall down, right? I mean, we tell our new volunteers the story that if you don't go through 3 valleys of death, means you are not doing, teen to lagenge hi lagenge. So then we show them the UPI chart, because UPI, for somebody to imagine that it went through 3 valleys of death, is very difficult, no? So when you show them that chart, journey line, actually this concept of a journey line comes from Tyagarajan, now in Upekha. And we make this journey line for almost anything that we do. Even if we were doing an event, we would say, what's the journey line? What were the low points? What are the high points? Because the difference between success and failure is how do you deal with those low points. And how you deal with your low points is a function of your mindset. And if you have not put yourself in a mindset of an underdog, then you can't put it at that point in time. You have to be in that concept of a mindset of an underdog right all the way through. So when things are going well with you, you don't get carried away. When things are not going well, you want to pick yourself up and move forward. So I think all the players, and I think there are 2 types of players. There are either startups that want to ding the universe. They have to be underdog mindset. And I think in some sense, what is happening in India, originally with iSPIRT, now hopefully there'll be 30 iSPIRTs over time, is that what is Silicon Valley entrepreneurship? Is saying we'll ding the universe and, by the way, get rich in the bargain.
Yeah.
Right? So Paul Graham says it very beautifully, that you have missionary entrepreneurs and mercenary entrepreneurs. Yeah. And he explains in his essay why missionary entrepreneurs are likely to be more successful than mercenary entrepreneurs. And that makes complete sense. So these missionary entrepreneurs are on a mission. Elon Musk is on a mission. Byproduct of that is that he's perhaps one of the richest people in the world. That's not his mission. His mission is the real mission, right? And that was the case with Intel. That's been the case with even the Google founders. Many of the people, they define their entrepreneurship as a mission of changing the world, dinging the world. Steve Jobs said this beautifully in his speech, right? So you want to dent the universe. I think what the Indian innovation to this is that in a 2x2, if you say that you either will set up a business, let's say a Korean restaurant which is not there in Koramangala, that's not dinging the universe. That's filling a gap in the market. The dinging the universe is that I will change how restaurants happen in the country, right? So you could do both. Silicon Valley celebrates the latter, right? Now you could also have a situation where you could say that about iSPIRT. iSPIRT's culture is about dinging the universe, but by saying, I don't need to become rich. I'll do it as a no greed, no glory volunteer, right? So this quadrant of dinging the universe and not desiring to make money is a unique quadrant that is not, it's very difficult to explain this in the US. If you go to the US, because their way of thinking is, if you don't have skin in the game, you don't have money as skin in the game, why could you be serious about this, right? And so therefore, they don't think you're serious about it. In India, you get actually the ability to influence because you have taken this approach of being no greed, no glory. So you can now say, I'm genuinely doing it for this cause. There is no hidden agenda that I have, which is either to get glory or to make money. And so you're able to co-opt others in the process. So you are able to give the glory to the policymakers. Because in India, for a policymaker, you have to understand this. It is very difficult to do something out of the norm. So anything that has, at least in India stack, that has happened, including, I would say, UPI. You remember when UPI was launched, SBI and HDFC did not launch UPI in August 2016. A normal RBI would have succumbed to their biggest bank's request to kill UPI. So you needed an RBI governor who was willing to stick his neck out for something that was not proven at all, right? So our view is that change in India happens when you stumble into policymakers like this, and they deserve the glory. And also change happens because our startups decide to embrace something that is not yet proven and pour their energy to kind of build on top of it and solve a problem that is important to solve. Let's say like PhonePe solved, Paytm has solved, JustPay and many others, BharatPay. These people were doing it at a time with UPI when it was not fashionable to do it with UPI. So they deserve the money that they make out of it. Is it not? So if you then approach this and say, if this is the ecosystem that you want to build, then the best way to co-opt the policymaker and the entrepreneur is to be yourself, no greed, no glory, right? Now, how many people want to be no greed, no glory? Very, very few.
Rare.
But our thing is that, look, we need only 150 volunteers within iSPIRT. And which means we need only one person for every crore Indian. Wo to mil jayega. So that is the thought process that is there.
I want to take a step back, right? From your observations, you have worked in US a lot, and you are far well aware of what's happening globally, right? That's how your thought process has shaped up. So according to you, how has India grown as a country in the last 30, 40 years? And how are we keeping up with the world's advancements?
Yeah. No, I would say that first of all, I think the 92 economic revolution set in stage for us to be able to build world-class companies at scale, right? So our IT services companies are as big as anybody else, right? I have a feeling that with these $250 billion, $500 billion orders placed by Air India and Indigo, our airlines will be the largest in the world. Would we be surprised by that? No. Why? Because today Airtel and Jio are amongst the largest operators in the world. To have our hospitals be amongst the largest in the world wouldn't surprise anybody at all. So I think one big change that has taken place is that we have the national confidence, to be able to build large services companies that are well run and so on and so forth, right? And I think that is extraordinarily helpful. Now we have to build the other part of this, right? Which I think is going to require some unlearning and relearning, obviously, for that to happen. And I think we are on a path to do that. So I feel that if you invite me back, I'll leave this for the audience. So remember, I mentioned to you Hens. Hens is Huawei, Ericsson, Nokia, and Samsung. These four people essentially supply mobile equipment to the rest of the world, of which much of that world, more than 50% of that world, does not want to buy from Huawei for geopolitical reasons. So the question is, who will replace it, right? So if you go and ask in the US, they'll say maybe Cisco will be that, or Mavenir is another company that is doing well. If you go to Europe, they'll say maybe Alcatel will do it, right? If I ask you here in India, you won't have an answer.
Yeah, nobody has
an answer. But what if I tell you?
Tejas.
What if I tell you that a year from now, it'll be Tejas,
okay,
right? And if it is Tejas, then you have to take me out for lunch.
Sure.
And if it is not Tejas, I'll take all of you out for lunch, right? As having lost the bet. And I think this understanding of what it takes to be able to do that is still poor. And we need to explain this to our young entrepreneurs, because our young entrepreneurs don't need to make the same mistakes that, let's say, India Stack made, or Tejas has made, or Bharat Biotech, because they made a COVID vaccine, they have made, or Idea Forge, because of what they're doing in defense, drones that they have made, or what we'll do in electronics. So because all the things are bubbling up now. Tejas itself is a 23-year-old company, right? There's been 20 years of work that has happened behind the scenes. And the learnings from all of this should be actually available to everybody else, because then they will make a new set of mistakes, right? And not repeat the old ones. So we have to, over the next few years, demystify this process of what does it mean. I think you've had, for example, Tarun from Ather here, right? And so if I take that as an example, right? Ather itself, their sense is that I got to build a good product, little or no doubt. But if you look at what Swapnil is trying to do, the other co-founder and CTO, his thing is that I've also got to build a great organization, a great factory that produces the product. This is what Tesla is doing, right? Tesla car has to be special. But that's not good enough. That's not enough. You also must have a outstanding factory, which you have built from ground up. You put in the same energy, perhaps even more energy, in rethinking the factory so that you can rethink the product. You are now operating at two levels. Now, this thinking is very, very important. So I would say Ather exhibits this. There's another Bangalore company we don't talk much about. It's called C6. They do a lot of work in seaweeds and stuff like that. They are operating like this, right? And that's why you need a philosopher CEO. Remember, we talked about it in the beginning. Because what is philosophy? Philosophy is to understand the humdrum of life, but also understand the deeper stuff that is happening. So if you want to build a successful product company, you actually need to be a great architect of a product. You have to be a great product architect. You have to be a great factory architect. And for that to happen, you need some people who will be good ecosystem architects, because all the three layers need to come together. And I think that is beginning to happen here in India. So if there are people who are in their early 20s, I would encourage them that this is the revolution. Your question was, how far have we come and where are we going? And I think where we are going is into this new era where the kind of companies that you want to build are these companies where you will be building a tremendous product, but also the engine that builds that product. And you would do it in an environment where there are other people who are helping think through what the ecosystem architecture will be, so that everything can come together as we go forward. So that's really the shift that I think is taking place, and I think it will pick up momentum, and maybe 15 years from now, we will truly be a product nation.
So I can tell you about how we as Neon Show operate, the purpose behind it, and Neon Fund operates as a purpose behind it. So Neon Show is dedicated to bring out stories like this that can give more confidence to Indian entrepreneurs that you can create it. Right. And what they hear, the unsung heroes. And I think India has done a very poor job in marketing itself.
Right. So I'll tell you this UPI story. UPI was announced by the then governor in February of 2015. And on February 11th or February 13th, I forget the date, of 2016, was in Taj Vivanta, the sandbox that was launched, and 321 people came for that. I remember that because everybody had to register. There was only one VC amongst them. His name is Alok Goel. He had joined SAFE, right? So he had come from Redbus, CEO, Google Redbus, and we started teasing him at the end and said, Alok, where are your colleagues? How come nobody else came? And he also sheepishly looked at this and said, yaar, main bhi isliye aaya because I'm a Googler, that is why I came, right? So we really started asking people, why are they not there? And the general consensus was that this looks nothing like a Chinese payment system or an American payment system. How can it succeed? Right? So I tell this story that we had to convince companies. We went to 5 companies in Koramangala. I'm not even going beyond that. Chiller, who had moved from Kerala to Koramangala, We said, this is great for you. They used to have an app. So if you were an HDFC customer and I was an HDFC customer, we could send money to each other using the Chiller app. We said, this is godsend for you. They said, maybe we'll check with HDFC. HDFC said, no, because they were not keen on UPI, so they didn't do it. We went to InstaMojo, which used to actually offer a link, right, against which you could pay. We said, this is going to be godsend for you. They didn't embrace this, right? They're a Bloom portfolio company. We, in fact, did 2 big meetings of iSPIRT there, because you remember iSPIRT has no office. So when you have to do a meeting, we have to ask people and say, Bhai, and we are very grateful that people go out of their way to offer space. So in this case, we actually picked InstaMojo, hoping that that discussion will, galvanize. It did not, right? Razorpay, another Koramangala company, embraced it with both hands. In fact, I would say in August, if you went and typed UPI on organic search, it was Razorpay's webinars that would come up on organic search. But they had taken money from MasterCard. MasterCard said, "Ye aap kyun kar rahe ho?" And they lost a year because, the board, which was composed mostly of VCs, did not understand that what's good for Razorpay is not synonymous with what is good for MasterCard, right? Otherwise, they would have been the most successful payment company. Then there was PhonePe. And PhonePe had a term sheet which went away, and all that drama happened. So they had to go back to their old employers to get money. And Sachin and Binny were super smart in giving them a lot of money, which of course has been a benefit to Walmart, at this point in time. But they took it up. But they were a young startup. They just started off. And JustPay took it up because they were a young startup. So the 2 companies that have done very well were the ones who had no legacy. See, our problem is that we are an old culture. And the reason we have survived as an old culture is because we have tremendous respect for legacy.
We keep going back to the old ways, old stories.
The old way, the old stories. Unfortunately, that is now preventing us from this short legacy of 20 years or 30 years of entrepreneurship, which was only a starter legacy.
And the sad part
It's
is,
not even a terrific legacy.
Yeah.
It's not as if,
Yeah.
It's a phenomenal legacy. It's a good legacy. Don't misunderstand me. But it's an incomplete legacy. But that is beginning to hold us back. So coming back to your question, why is it startups are so successful in China and not so successful in Taiwan?
they took up the nationalist thing that we want to build it ourselves.
No. What happened is that China, like India, had a very strong sense of how to build a business.
Yeah.
Right? Because India, in many people, it's in their family for God knows, 1,000 years, right?
Yeah.
Not surprising at all. So there is a tacit knowledge about how to build a business. That tacit knowledge that was there all ran away because those businessmen ran away to where? To Taiwan.
Yeah.
वो बेचारे जो बचे थे उसको Mao cultural revolution wiped it out. So they had a clean slate to start with. And in that clean slate, they adopted whatever it took to build the kind of businesses that they want to do, which in Taiwan you're not able to do. Is it not? So let's examine what is it that we must unlearn. We talked about what we must learn. Let's examine what must we unlearn from traditional businesses, which prevents us to be successful in the new world. Is that a fair thing to talk about? So first and foremost is a traditional businessman in India, right, would say कि यार emotion अपनी जगह है, business धंधा अपनी जगह है. I will build my conviction in this when the numbers start looking good, right? The numbers for UPI started ticking up slowly only in September of 2017. And whoever entered the UPI market after September 2017 does not effectively exist. Because the S-curve, when the first inflection happens, because these are all S-curve inflections, right? Today, tech is all about S-curve inflection. After the first S-curve inflection happens, it's already too late to enter the market. Not only for the entrepreneur, but even for an early stage investor. I say to early stage investors that it's already come in times of India. It's already too late for you, right? So because that S-curve inflection is very important. So how do you then build conviction if that market data is not the source of conviction? So I tell this story that in December of 2016, UPI, even the B map has not been launched. That was launched on December 30th, 2016. UPI is just, limping along at that time. We get a message from Sequoia saying John is coming to meet you on Thursday and Friday. And please unse milo. John Collison of Stripe. That time the company was valued only at 18 billion. I don't know what it is today.
100
is plus 100 plus billion. But even then, he held the title for being the youngest person to turn a billionaire, which he holds today too. So he turned a billionaire at an age younger than Mark Zuckerberg became a billionaire, right? Now, what should that do? It should give you a sense that, I've arrived. But instead, he happens to read Vivek Wadhwa's column in Washington Post in the middle of 2016, saying Silicon Valley, watch out, this India stack is coming. He digs further, he finds stuff on UPI, and he's now on Thursday morning on Royal Orchid Hotel sitting in front of us. And very nice, he said, I'm very grateful because I had made a resolution that I have to meet the people who wrote the UPI architecture, 67-page architecture. It was 67 page. So he said, I've read everything about UPI. I am very impressed and I wanted to meet all of you. So I took the visa and 15 days before the year is over, here I am, right? And the snarky guy that I am, I said, he said, I've read all 251 pages of this. And I said, but our architecture document is only 67 pages, right? I thought I got him, right? So he then said, no, but I read these other 3 documents also. Now, I'm not joking. While he's doing the talking, I open my laptop, I pull up those documents, I see the page numbers and I total them up and they're 251. And then you can see I'm now looking at him with a fresh pair of eyes, with respect. And, on Friday evening, he had extra time because he was going to the flights go very late. So Shekhar Kirani, who's been a very critical part of iSPIRT and helped co-found iSPIRT, also in Koramangala. So I asked Shekhar, would you like to meet? Of course, he said yes. And then at the end of it, he says, man, we are screwed. Because our assessment was that none of our entrepreneurs had bothered to read the 67-page document.
And somebody has read 251 pages.
And in a market that he didn't want to serve. See, I tell this story again. If you go back to Satya's book, there is a section on India Stack well before India Stack became famous. So he was coming, he set up time for a 1.5-hour meeting. We thought, hum whiteboard mein jaake sab batayenge. For most of the time, he was on the whiteboard. Usse pucha, bhai, kya, kaise pata chala? He said, no, I did 6 preparatory calls before I came here. We said, why? He said, no, because my job is because I operate as a platform business. I find this very fascinating. We can learn a lot from this. Right? So the point is that this learning mindset, see, hamara education system also creates a cheat sheet culture. So how do you build conviction? You build conviction by actually reading everything there is on it and then actually saying this makes sense to me. I can bet on this. Now that bet works in a S-curve model. The dhanda bad gaya wala bet does not work in this model. So this is number 1. Number 2 is that when you do this, you have to be able to understand that inside this is something that you can leverage. I would even use the word exploit, right? And then you have to make a determination how to do it, right? So for JustPay, for PhonePe, UPI was not proven, but they had said we will leverage it, right? We will exploit it as we go forward, right? As the UPI protocol and all the system. How to do that is often not clear when something is very, very new. So supposing I tell you there is a new way of of collaborating between modelers and data providers, and that's called DEPA. And I explained DEPA to you, and you've never seen anything like this. And you study it and you say, look, I like it. I am going to make a bet on this. But if you go and ask people and say, okay, how should I do it? There's nobody to tell you. Right? So therefore, you have to have the ability to figure that out. There are no pre-built bhajans at that time. So if today you go, what is iSPIRT famous for in SaaS is the playbook roundtable on desk marketing and selling that we did with, people like Sridhar Membu, Girish, Pallav Nathani, all the people that you're talking about, sharing their playbook with everybody else. So there was a bhajan to go around, and that bhajan was created by bringing all the bhajan singers together, right? That was, and the credit goes to all of them that they were willing to share their company bhajan with everybody else. And this is what I think Avinash's genius is, because he's able to enroll people in ways that I don't think anybody else can. So I think that bhajan was at least there because desk marketing and selling had been done by others. But what was the bhajan available to Zoho? That is the bhajan that Girish got, no?
Girish got it very early. He was the first person to get the bhajan of Zoho.
Isn't it?
Yeah.
But so the point is, Zoho became Zoho because it created its damn bhajan. It didn't have the luxury to get it from anybody else. Sridhar and his team had to create the bhajan. Second is, you cannot be successful if you are implementer of a bhajan. You have to be a creator of a bhajan, which means you have to go deeper. Are you with me?
Yeah.
Right? The third thing that is also very important is that now that you've done that, you got a product in the market. Now, usually when you get it in the market, you are serving an underserved market, which people had not cracked open. So, for example, if you now are doing Open Credit Enablement Network, you are going and serving those MSMEs who can't get a 1-year working capital limit from the bank. They are very happy you are doing it for them. For them, they will take this with both hands, right? So in the beginning, when you serve a white space, you are in a seller's market. But that seller's market changes to a buyer's market very quickly. And when it changes to a buyer's market very quickly, you have to up your game. Your product has to be better. And the way you deliver that product, that experience, your NPS has to be high, right? So I tell this story. I live very close to Forum Mall. In the early days of Flipkart, you had to buy an extra battery because they were replaceable batteries. We started buying them on Flipkart. And then I remember people would make fun of us and say, you could have walked 200 yards and you would have got it from the Sangeeta store. Why are you so lazy? Because the experience of Flipkart, and that is how Flipkart succeeded. The NPS of Flipkart was very, very high.
Yeah.
Right? By the time Amazon came, Junglee came, they didn't kill Flipkart. Flipkart had destroyed its NPS on its own by then. And now, therefore, they were able to take the high ground. We used to buy fresh menu food. When fresh menu came, it was very popular. Then when the bowl company came, they offered a better. Did anybody have loyalty? Everybody switched. Now, even fresh menu, despite being a startup, for them to adjust and change their product and experience sufficiently and quickly is very, very hard. So the third learning is aim for high NPS even though the market does not need it. Now the problem in the Indian traditional business thinking is that, you are leaving money on the table. Why are you leaving money on the table? So the traditional business ethics say don't leave money on the table. So therefore what happens is we actually aim for what Kunal Shah says, for a lower score. And when the market reorganizes itself at a higher level, you are not in a position to actually you lose your first mover advantage. Now think of this. This is not a new idea. This is an idea that Amazon brought to us. Because the only company, Google is not the first mover in search, nor in browser. almost in nothing, nor in Android, right?
Nor in email.
Nor in email, right?
Yeah.
So learning from that, what Jeff Bezos said was that if I have to be a first mover and stay a first mover and not be a victim to somebody else, my NPS has to be high right from the beginning. And he managed to convince public shareholders in the US that this is the right thing to do. And they stuck by him for years. And after Warren Buffett letters, it's the Amazon Jeff Bezos letters that are popular. Find me a letter which does not have improved NPS score on the first page, right? There's not a single letter, because you'll find revenue growth in the second or third page, but NPS growth is on the first page. So this is contrary to our traditional business. So this is the unlearning that we must have. So we need a conversation in India about athletic Gavaskars. Our choke point is no longer whether the ecosystem is ready, whether the market is ready, whether the investors are ready. Frankly, our entrepreneurs are not ready. And we have to therefore help them be ready. And that means they must have a mindset of what does it mean to be a good cricketer? What does it mean to be a good entrepreneur? And that definition has to be a different definition than the one that we have today.
I was telling you, and the one reason why our fund exists. So we say for every SaaS company that we invest in, we try to make sure that the company can hit 10 mil ARR in 3 years of our investment at pre-seed stage.
Sure.
What does it ensure? That, wherever the valuation game will continue, whatever happens, that a company has a shot at 100 mil ARR journey after 3 years.
Absolutely.
An entrepreneur has tasted a large success. 10 mil ARR is a decent success. And once entrepreneur tastes success, then he can confidently say, I don't want to sell my company.
Sure.
I can play a long innings.
Absolutely.
So I think...
look, this is possible. It's happening in our ecosystem. We just need to have this become the mainstream way of doing it. See, the question, of course, is, so one of the things that we have to acknowledge is that that all the people who become a product nation, so an example being Korea, they needed seeding of the technology. In the case of Korea, a lot of the tech transfer took place by the US as explicit policy, right? In China, our Chinese friends will hate this statement, but they stole a lot of that technology. There's little doubt about that. India also needs a tech transfer to seed this revolution. India has a very unique way of doing this. Actually, that unique way is that tech transfer is taking place with people returning back. So if you look at India Stack is, people like Sanjay Jain, Pramod Verma, Vivek Raghavan, and many more people, Bala Parthasarthi, and more. They all people are people who came back from the US. They're all people like who, we were all working in the R&D part in the US and we chose to come back. So although we didn't steal anything, but in a very kosher way, we brought technology back. And that's been very helpful. And that will continue, because if we have to become an AI nation, we will need to get a new set of people. And so if you can create the right ecosystem, people are willing to come back, right? Because there is now a new belief in India. There is a sense of India's future will be great. So especially the people who are now, under 40, even in the US, they are happy to explore this. And frankly, a lot of MNC R&D players brought the R&D people back, who then, even Sachin and Binny were part of Amazon R&D, and that helped them go forward. So that brain drain that happened is actually going to pay off. Now, this is not the only place where it has happened. Israel also saw the same thing. Israel started this whole process of revolution by having a red carpet for Russian emigres. And that in 2008 became an important part. So a lot of this reverse brain drain that happened, which is people from Russia came into Israel, or like Indians are coming back to India, is turned out to be important. So my feeling is, look, there's an open world. Let the people go wherever they want to. But as long as we can pull them back. And I think we can, because India is such a powerful idea that it never goes away from people, right?
Yeah.
And our family systems are so strong that that's another reason. So if India can build a good ecosystem, if the ecosystem architects can do a good job, then we'll always have the benefit of being able to seed that with the right technology by having the right technologists coming back and doing that. So, for example, in quantum computing, this is exactly what is happening. Acciquent, one of the companies that is there, is a person who's come back from the US and set this up here in Hyderabad and driving it. So I think in many of the new areas, you will see this happen as we go forward. So I don't think we should worry too much about brain drain, because if things go right for India, that will become an asset for us to lean on as we go forward.
But do you think it's happening in masses? Because every year the number of people who are giving Indian citizenship is going higher.
But it's not going higher in the tech sector,
Yeah.
right? So if you go back 10 years
Yeah.
and you saw from, let's say, IIT Bombay, because
Yeah.
that used to send lots of people. I don't know the exact numbers, but they're out in the open. They would be roughly 80% of the people would go abroad.
Yeah.
Now 80% of the people choose to stay here.
Yeah.
So I think it is not happening in this mix. It is happening for other job categories where people feel they don't have enough opportunities here in India. And some of those are, like in Canada, some of those are trucking jobs,
Yeah.
teaching jobs, nursing jobs. It is happening in those areas. I don't think this is a very big problem today in the tech sector.
So-
and therefore we should be fine. as we
In
go
a
forward.
research, it's also pointing out that the number of Indian millionaires or Indian crorepati's who are giving up citizenship is also at the highest.
Right.
And it's not just US, it's
Right.
Dubai,
Right.
places which are giving them like zero tax
Right. Right.
havens.
Right. And this is a topic for another time, is that I think the way to tackle all this is to fix the system in India. So, for example, many of our SaaS companies are not domiciled in
Yeah.
India. The way to solve this is not to put more restrictions on that, but is to solve the irritations that force them
Yeah.
to go to some other place. And so, therefore, for many years, we as with others run a program called Stay in India Checklist, which is there on a blog. If you see that, you'll see what all has happened, and there's been some progress. But this is one of those cases which is like cooking. Even if in cooking you had the right ingredients, you kept it
Yeah.
on the gas for the right amount of time, but you put too much salt in it. You made one mistake and the dish is
Yeah.
spoiled. So I think we need the government to understand that, saying we have resolved 17 of the 25 issues is no good.
Yeah.
Because, you have to get completeness here, and then only the system changes. And the good news is that I think we have policymakers there who are willing to understand this. But we have still the hard work to do to actually turn good intentions into reality. So hopefully that will happen as we go forward.
Yeah. So I wish Girish, if that had happened earlier, Girish would have IPO'd Freshworks in India.
Exactly. Flipkart would have stayed an Indian
Yeah.
company. InMobi would have been an Indian company, right? So by virtue of not having them as Indian companies, and the biggest beneficiaries are the Singaporeans, right?
Yeah.
I mean, there are 800 high quality companies that are domiciled in Singapore. This is a gift that we have given
Yeah.
to them, right? 40% of our unicorns are technically not Indian at all,
Yeah.
right? They are Singaporean or American. So we count them in our list, but
Yeah.
that's really not the case. The back end is here, but tomorrow when they make money, then money will benefit Singaporean society, the US society. So we have that challenge which we have to resolve as we go forward.
But thank you so much,
Thank you
sir.
so much. Thank you so much.
It's been such a pleasure.
Thank you. No, it's
I
been an
enjoyed
honor for
every
me.
second of conversation.
No, it's been an honor for me. Thank you for inviting me, and wish you all the best.
It's been a very different conversation.
Yeah, thank you so much.